Good day to our listeners. I am Fiona Alexander Smith, Director of Information and Communication for the Government of Montserrat, and I am speaking today with the Premier, Honorable Joseph Farrell, regarding recent announcements from Antigua as it relates to travel into Antigua. On September 15th, the Cabinet of Antigua and Barbuda announced new measures as part of their policy to manage COVID-19. And one of those measures is that as of October 1, all arriving passengers, including nationals of Antigua and residents of Antigua, are required to have at least the first dose of a vaccine for COVID-19. Premier Farrell, I know this morning you had a conversation with the Honorable Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, Gaston Brown, and I'm just going to ask you to just go through that conversation. What was the nature of that discussion with him?
Good day, Fiona. Good day, everyone. Let me just give a backdrop to this position. Over the past 18 or 20 months of COVID, the Caribbean has experienced very low cases of COVID. So we have enjoyed some level of success. And while the rest of the world, the numbers was increasing, our numbers were very slow. As of last week, the number of deaths in the Caribbean is about 21,000. And the number of cases is rising significantly over the past weeks. It is against that backdrop that I think that Caribbean leaders are looking at how best can we mitigate against the increased number of cases and also secure our economies. And so we have been having meetings over the past months in terms of what's the best strategy in order to protect the health of our people, at the same time, open up our economies. As recently as last week, we had a meeting.
When you say we, Caribbean leaders?
Caribbean leaders met last week. And there are different opinions as to what to do. But there are some countries who are adamant that we must, in fact, do something to protect ourselves. And so I wasn't surprised that Honorable Brown looked at the situation and decided to take some action. So yes, on the 15th of September, the Cabinet of Antigua made some decisions. And this morning, I had, as you quite rightly pointed out, I had a discussion with Prime Minister Brown to seek clarity as to how the new COVID policy would affect the traveling public from Montserrat. I asked him, for instance, exactly who will be affected. And he, in uncertain terms, said to me, all passengers, everyone coming to Antigua, will be required to have at least a first dose, as you have pointed out, of one of the 3 vaccines that are now available in Antigua. So it means that if you're traveling to or from Montserrat through Antigua, you must have at least a first dose, or else you will not be allowed to enter Antigua. In addition, I also asked the Minister of Health, the Acting Minister of Health, to speak to the Honorable Malvin Joseph, Minister of Health in Antigua, just to verify that our standing arrangement in relation to medivacs and emergencies still stands. Honorable Joseph confirmed with the minister that that's still in place, that Montserrat can still send their medical personnel to Antigua, providing we adhere to the policy, the protocols that are in place. And that was just showing for us because we were concerned. Because in case of emergency, you need to get your people out for medical emergencies. And so he assured us that that is still intact. So we are comfortable that we can still deal with our emergency patients going to Antigua, providing we keep within the protocols that we have already established.
Right, and those are the COVID-19
yes.
protocols, where
exactly.
persons have to be tested before
you
they
do a PCR
allowed.
test before you reach to Antigua, and there's a special vehicle in Antigua to take you to where you're going and take you back and that kind of thing. So that's in place, and we are comfortable with that. So that's assuring for the Ministry of Health and us that we are able to take care of our sick people in case of emergencies.
Right. Regarding your discussion with Prime Minister Brown, were there discussions about maybe a possible bubble or exemption for Montserratians? Particularly, we have Montserratians who are traveling here for business and for health reasons, or in terms of family, coming to look for family. And so were there any discussions about the possibility of that?
No, we hadn't gone into the detail about any logistical arrangements for any compromise position, let me put it that way. Because as a Caribbean leader myself, I have to basically speak to my colleagues and tend to understand where they're coming from. And so, no, I did not entertain anything after Bob, because Bob is really saying to us, can you give us some privilege, a privileged position for persons who are not vaccinated to come to Montserrat? Mm-hmm. That's what I'm asking. And I have not reached a stage where I do that. Mm-hmm. As I said, in case of die emergency, then we can do it on a case-by-case basis. But I don't know that there's a bubble. I have not gone into that discussion.
Right. And you said that, it's for persons arriving in Antigua. So once you land in Antigua, essentially, whether you're connecting to Montserrat almost immediately, or a couple hours or a few hours after your time of arrival, you must be vaccinated.
That's my understanding. You're considered landing in Antigua. Because what you have to understand here, Fiona, is that if you don't do that, then what we have to now put in place is a special transit launch or something for Montserratians to stay once they arrive in Antigua, and who is going to manage and the cost implications. So that is another area that we have to look into. You can say, okay, can you have a facility where Montserratians stay? But you actually want to circumvent, in my opinion, the policy, and I don't know the Antigua. We will talk about it next week in detail. I'm sure that we have a meeting next week and see how best we can facilitate Montserratians, if we can in any way, to get them here. Mm-hmm. But that is not negating the fact that we need to get vaccinated. And I'm not in any way trying to tell Montserratians to circumvent the issue, to circumvent the position, because we need to get vaccinated. There are persons, as I said before, who cannot, for health reasons or religious reasons, and we understand those cases. And if the doctors can say at our surety that they cannot, clearly I will try and make a case for those persons. But I'm not going to go on a limb just to say, can we have a blanket exemption from your policy? Because the Caribbean has to protect ourselves. And as the slogan is, no one is safe until all of us are safe. And so, I empathize with people who are out there and who feel about the vaccine, because we all have a right. And I'm very sorry that there are persons who do not want to take the vaccine for whatever reason. And I understand, but we have to take the wider picture in terms of the global picture in terms of how can we protect each other. And so we will have some discussion. I'm certain I'm going to speak to another Prime Minister this evening to see what their feelings are on it.
Okay, so as of today, Friday, September 17th, persons who are traveling to or from Montserrat, and we know we have to travel through Antigua, you must be vaccinated as per the policy established by the Antiguan government.
Yes, you're correct. As a matter of fact, Prime Minister Brown said, when I asked about in transit, he said in transit passengers as well. And you must have at least a first dose. That was very clear.
Right.
Very clear.
Right. And you did mention that, it's the vaccines that are currently in use in Antigua, so I'll just go over those. So the COVID-19 vaccines, for the benefit of the listeners, the COVID-19 vaccines which are currently in use in Antigua and Barbuda are the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, the Sputnik V, and the Pfizer vaccine.
Yes.
So those are the three vaccines currently being used. In terms of whether or not they would approve others, that's a matter for the Antiguan authorities, I guess, on a case-by-case basis as persons are traveling.
Right.
And as we get further information, we'd update the list, if there's information coming from Antigua indicating that there are other vaccines that they'll accept. Now,
Right.
Premier, in your conversation, I must ask, because, we have December coming up. You did speak about the possibility of a sort of festival this year for us on Montserrat. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, people may want to travel home for business purposes, to look for their property, families, whatever it is. So for Montserratians who may want to come home and they may not be vaccinated, is the Office of the Premier now willing to, or in the process of exploring other possible gateways for entry into Montserrat?
Clearly, Fiona, we would all remember that in my budget statement, I emphasized the need for us to have an alternate gateway or a second gateway into Montserrat. And over the past months, my access team has been speaking to St. Martin, because we see St. Martin as an alternate gate or a second gateway. And we have had discussion because what we want to do really is to, as I said, is to introduce flights out of another direction of the Caribbean into Montserrat. And so we have been having discussions in terms of air travel. We have not spoken to the government of St. Martin, because if we talk to the airline, it is the airline who then will open the route from St. Martin to Montserrat. And so, yes, it's very high on our agenda in terms of getting a second gateway. It's just for us to access and have available to us the aircraft to fly from that area, and then we have to do our marketing, because presently most of our traveling public to Montserrat travels through Antigua as their connecting gateway. So we'll have to also do marketing. So we just cannot get up and say we're going to use St. Martin. We have to put logistics in place and then market St. Martin. But we are doing that. We will continue to do that because we believe that not only for COVID, but for the economic growth of Montserrat, we need to have that alternate gateway into Montserrat. And which, as a matter of fact, if we can have direct flights from St. Martin to Montserrat via Twin Otter, I think people will take it because why you have your connecting. You do your baggage in Boston and you come to St. Martin, you come straight to Montserrat and come to Antigua and pick it up. So we're not ruling out Antigua, but we want to have that option that we can use another gateway coming to Montserrat. So that's very much on our agenda.
All right. Thank you so much, Premier. Any final comments on this matter as we wrap up?
I understand the concerns of our people, and I empathize with the Montserratians who have not been vaccinated and who intend to travel to Montserrat, and that this policy is dampening your spirit. But I urge you, there's still have time. There are a number of vaccines available in your countries. Get your first shot, whichever it is, Pfizer, Moderna, or AstraZeneca. Just get your first shot. I know some people are reluctant. And if you're reluctant, then that's as much as I can encourage you to think about it seriously and determine whether you want to do it. And if you want to travel to Montserrat, I know some of you have not been here for the past 2 years, and we want to welcome you home. But at the same time, we have to protect you and protect our people as well. So do come, but please take your first shot and come to Montserrat.
I did say we're wrapping up, but as you mentioned, the availability of vaccines, we need to talk about the availability of vaccines on Montserrat now with this.
Yes, I asked the Minister of Health this morning in a meeting with her to let me know how many more doses do we have. We got you recall we got 80 doses, I think, 2 weeks ago thereabouts.
Right. My understanding is that the vaccines are coming in based on registration.
We have, because what we don't want is a repetition of what happened to the first 2 batches. We don't want to have vaccines that are thrown away or disposed. So we're asking people to register, and once the numbers get to a certain level, then we will ask for a small batch to come in. And the Ministry of Health will tell you that they are now speaking to the UK about Pfizer. Pfizer has been available. It's just that we didn't have the storing capacity to do it. And as recently as yesterday, yes, they are in touch with Public Health England. The governor spoke to us as well, and they are willing to give us some Pfizer, provided we can show that we can store it. I will allow the Minister of Health to welcome more into that, but that is also available. So people can now sign up for Pfizer as well. Montserrat can now go to the clinic at St. John's, sign up for your Pfizer vaccine, and once the numbers are adequate, we will get Pfizer in here.
Right. Okay. So it's still based on registration.
Registration.
Right?
Because what we don't want to do is to be able to waste that resource that other countries do need. Because we are fortunate in Montserrat, but there are countries who are still way behind in terms of the number of those that they can acquire. So we don't want to have a case where we are throwing away vaccine.
All right. Thank you so much, Premier. For the listeners who might have tuned in late, you just listened to an interview with Premier of Montserrat, Honorable Joseph E. Farrell, recorded on Friday, September 17th, discussing Antigua's new vaccination travel policy, which also applies to in-transit passengers to and from Montserrat. And just to highlight some key points here, takeaway points, the persons traveling to and from Montserrat are required to have at least the first dose of the COVID-19 vaccine, so you must be at least partially vaccinated. And in terms of medical emergencies, the Honorable Veronica Dorset Hector, Acting Minister of Health, spoke with Minister of Health Honorable Sir Malwyn Joseph, and he confirmed that the Antiguan authorities will still accept medical emergencies from Montserrat, whether or not the individual is vaccinated. However, the strict COVID-19 protocols, which are already in place, must be followed. Thanks again for listening. In a very quick update, since the recording of that interview, an official source in Antigua and Barbuda has confirmed that the approved vaccines, COVID-19 vaccines for use in Antigua, are AstraZeneca, Sinopharm, Sputnik V, Johnson & Johnson, and Pfizer.